Hey, how's it going, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to export data from SQL Server to Google Spreadsheets. Before we begin, there are some prerequisites that are required. So first, you need to have some experience writing Python program. Second, you need to know how to use Google APIs, such as Google Sheets API, U2 API, and so on. Since the procedure of using different Google APIs is pretty similar, except that the services are different. And the last requirement is you will need to have a database system that supports ODBC connection manager. So essentially, this tutorial is not limiting to Microsoft SQL Server database system. You can use this script to export data sets from other database systems as well, such as MySQL, Oracle, SQLite, or even Microsoft Access database. If you don't have experience working with Google Sheets API or Microsoft SQL Server, I have a couple playlists. So one playlist for Microsoft SQL Server, and the other playlist is for how to get started with Google Sheets API in Python. I'll link the links in the description below. Now let's take a look at the data set that will be exporting to Google Sheets. So I'll be exporting these two queries. Let me run both tables first. Alright, so this is going to be table number 1, so the first data set, and it's going to be data set number 2 that we're going to push to Google Spreadsheets. And it's a very simple table. So the first table has 2 columns, issue reported and incident count. The second table has 4 columns. I want to emphasize on the third column, published dates. When you import datetime value from SQL Server to using ODBC, it's going to return as a datetime object. And later on, we're going to learn how to convert the data object to a proper format that Google Spreadsheets will accept. Now let me go to the spreadsheet itself. And let me delete. Actually, I'll leave the count. Actually, let me delete the table. So I'll import the data set to, let's see, let's use sheet 2. So I'll import the data set to sheet 2. And this is going to be the spreadsheet I'll be using. Now let's go to our Python editor. And these are the, actually these two are the libraries that I'll be using, PyODBC and Pandas. And if you don't have the library installed, you can follow the command pip install PyODBC and pip install Pandas to install the libraries. And the Google module is a utility module that I wrote based on the example that Google provides. And I modified the script to simplify the Google API service creation. And now we can get started. So for the first task, we are going to connect Python to Microsoft SQL Server. So we need to provide a driver. And for SQL Server, the driver name is SQL Server. Server name. If you don't know your server name, then you can go to SQL Server and run this select statement. Select followed by 2 @ server name. And I'll return the server name linked to this database. And the third value we need to provide is the database name. And my table is stored in the JJ database. So if I look at my database, this is the database that I'm currently connecting to. So to connect to any database using ODBC, we need to first of all provide a connection string. And the connection string is basically the string that indicating the detail of the information you need to provide when you are connecting to a database system. So I'll create a function, I'll name this function connection string. And we're going to provide 3 parameters, driver name, server name, and database name. I'll name the variable conn_string. I'm going to convert the string to f string so that way I can directly insert the arguments. So inside the string, we need to specify the driver, and we're going to insert three sets of curly brackets. And it's going to be driver name. For server name, it's going to be server as the parameter name. And it's going to be server name argument. And for the database, it's going to be a database parameter. And we're going to insert database name argument. Also need to make sure that the trust connection setting is set to yes. And here is a typo. Database name. Right. Now, in case if you are logging into your SQL Server database system with a credential, it can provide the username and password using UID for username and PWD for password. So this is going to be your password, and it's going to be your username. And since I'm using a local database, so I can directly connect to my database system. So I'll put these two variables on the top. Shouldn't use pound sign. Here I'll move the notes inside the function. Alright, so we have the function and we need to return the string. Here I'm going to insert try except block. The first error I want to check is the odbc.database error. And if this error occurs, then I want to print a message database error. I want to print the error message. It should be error.value. And the value is going to return as a tuple. I want to grab the second element. And for any other errors other than database error, then I want to print message connection error. And I'll print the error message. Now let's go back to the try block. And here's where we can create our connection object. So from ODBC, and that's from the PyODBC module. And this is a method called connect. If we look at the parameters, the first parameter is the connection string. So I'll insert the connection string function. I'll insert the driver name. Driver. Let me rename this to driver name. So driver name, server name, database name. So here's another typo. This should be VER. Alright. Now if the connection is created successfully, then I want to print message connection created. And here I'm going to insert the else statement, the else block. So basically, if this procedure is executed successfully, then we'll go to the else block. Inside the else block, we can basically retrieve the records from SQL Server, then push the data set to Google Sheets. And before we can do that, we need to provide our SQL statement. So I'll name this variable SQL query. And I'll go back to my database. Let's see. Let's use this one first. So this statement. So I'll select the top 2000 record from these 4 columns. And once we have the SQL query or SQL statement, we can create a cursor object. And the cursor object allows you to basically manipulate the data inside your SQL Server database or the database that you're using. And this should be connection, CONN. Oh, so I forgot to create my connection object. Now let's go back to line 38. So from the connection object, I can create my cursor object by referencing the cursor method. And once I have the cursor object created, I can execute my SQL statement, and this should be execute. And I'll pass the SQL query. Now let's go to step 1.2. So at this point, we can retrieve the record set. I'll name the output as record set. So from cursor object, I'll insert the fetch method. And it's going to work like a generator. So we can only fetch the data set one time. And if we want to retrieve the data set, then we need to run the statement again. Alright, so let me do this. I'm going to run the select code block. Alright, so here I have an error, connection error. So that means my connection string is incorrect. So let me run the function by itself. Okay, so if I look at the connection string, the name server is incorrect. This should be server. Let me try again. So I'm going to run the try except block. And this time I'm getting connection created. The cursor object is created, and just the nodes. Right. So if I print record set object, and it's going to return my data set. And let me print the first record. And it's going to give me a tuple. And noticing that here, the datetime value is going to return as a datetime object. And we need to convert the this datetime object to a string. And to do that, I usually like to use Pandas to handle those type of conversion. So here let me import the column headers first. So from cursor.description, and if I run this statement right here, and it's going to give me the column header information. So the first element is going to be the column name. The second element is going to be the column type. I forgot the remaining information. I think the last one is whether or not if a value is required. Right, so here let me grab the column names. I'm going to insert list comprehension. I'm going to say that for column in cursor.description, and I'm only interested in the first element. And that's going to give me the column headers in a list. Now we have the rows and the columns. The next task is converting the datetime object. So from Pandas library data frame, I'll pass records as my data and columns as my column headers. And I'll print the first record from df object. Oops, I forgot to run the statement. Right, so if I print the first record, here we go. It's going to give me this datetime format. I think that should be fine. Let me check something. Let me print the first two records. If I convert the data frame to values, then to lists, Let me take a look at the output. Okay, so here from the output, it's going to return as a timestamp, and I want a string. So let's go back to df object. I'll move this display settings configuration to the top. So let me grab the columns, and it's going to be publish date. So let me reference the column from df object, and I want to reference the values using the dt attribute. If I print this, it's going to return as a datetime properties object. At this point, we can use the strft time to provide the pattern that we want to convert the datetime values to. I want to convert to the format that SQL Server will accept. And the pattern is going to be, let me just type the pattern string. Right, it's going to be %y m and d. So this is going to be the pattern for the dates value, and time value is going to be look like this. Now if I run line 56, and so this should be strft time. It should be strf time. Now if I so let's do this. So if I retrieve the first 5 records, 2 values, then 2 lists, and this time my datetime format is going to look like a regular string. And here I'm going to recreate my record set object from df.values.toList. Now this record set object is ready to go. Now we can go to step 2, which is to export the record set or data set to Google spreadsheets. So here we need to provide the ID, the Google Sheets ID, and I'll copy paste the link here. And I'll create a variable called GS sheet ID, and it's going to be Google spreadsheet ID, and which is this string right here. So I'll copy and paste, and the next item we need is the GID value, and that's the worksheet ID. So I'll name the variable tab ID, and the value has to be integer. Now I can create my constant variables to store the information that I need to provide to create the Google Sheets API service instance. We need to provide the client secret file, and it's going to be client secret.json file, and your file name might be a little bit different. API name, and it's going to be sheets API version, and the scopes value. And the scope value I'm going to use is the www.googleapis.com/auth/spreadsheets. And this scope gives me the ability to manage and read a user's account's spreadsheet information. Now I can construct my service instance. So insert my create service function, and I'll provide client secret file, API name, API version, and scopes. Here I want to construct my spreadsheets object, and the object is going to link to these Google spreadsheets. So insert notes, create spreadsheets reference object. I'll name the object my spreadsheets. So from service object dot spreadsheets dot get, and here we need to insert the SQL at the end. And all we need to provide is the spreadsheet ID to the spreadsheet ID parameter. Now I'm going to run the code block that I want to execute. So from line 64 to line 77. If I print my spreadsheets object, and it's going to return as a dictionary. Inside the dictionary, it's going to give me some of the basic information associated to the spreadsheet. So such as the worksheet name, the default formats, padding, and so on. Enable to insert the record set from this record set object to a spreadsheet, to a Google spreadsheet. Unfortunately, we cannot simply insert the worksheet ID. We need to provide the worksheet name. And to reference the worksheet name, so if we look at my spreadsheets, I'll reference the sheet's ID. Under this sheet's ID, and it's going to return a list. Inside this list, it's going to contain the worksheet's information I need, such as the worksheet's index, actually not index, the worksheet ID, the worksheet name, and the worksheet's position. And I'm only interested in the name. So I'm going to insert another list comparison, and I'm going to say that for sheet from this output, I want to insert if condition, if sheet given the properties values, and followed by sheet ID. I want to compute the ID against tab ID value. And if this condition is met, then it's going to give me the sheet object. And then I can reference the worksheet name. And the name is going to be title. So I'll name the output as tab name. Now I'm going to run line 81. And if I print tab name, and it's going to return a list with a single element. I want to grab the string value by referencing the index value. Let me see if I can insert a new line. Okay, so that should be good, I guess. Let me try. Okay, so I got an index, I got a syntax error. Okay, now I might give up, so let me put everything back. I don't think that was for list comprehension. Now imagine that if I'm going to do this procedure manually, what I will do is I will clear the content first, then I will insert the data set. So this is going to be clear worksheet content. And to clear worksheet content is pretty easy. So I'll reference the service object dot spreadsheets dot values. And we can use the clear method to clear a worksheet. I'll provide the spreadsheet ID and the cell range. And since I don't need to worry about the cell range, I just want to clear everything on the worksheet. I can simply just insert the worksheet name. Now let's test out this statement. So I'm going to insert some values. And if I run this code block, And here's, oh, okay, so I forgot to recreate the tab name. Right, let me try again. So if I run this code block, and if I go back to my spreadsheet, and everything is clear. Now we can insert the data set. When you want to insert data or rows or values to a Google spreadsheet, we need to provide a dictionary to store the information. And to simplify the process, I'll create a function called construct request body. And this function is going to have two parameters, value array and dimension. And I'll set the default value to rows, so we can insert the data set by columns or by rows. And the output is going to be a dictionary. And inside this function, I want to create another dictionary. I'll name this dictionary request body. And we're going to specify the major dimension. And it's going to be from dimension argument. And the other parameter is going to be values. And value is going to be the data array that I want to insert to the spreadsheet. And it's going to be from value array. Then I want to return the request body dictionary. And if we run into an error, I want to print the error message. Then I want to return an empty dictionary. So we'll start with the columns first. So I'll name this request body columns. And I'll insert the construct request body function. Because we need to insert a next array object, so we need to wrap the columns with another list. And so we can use a tuple as well. Here, let me use a list, just be safe. And let me run these code blocks. And if I print request body columns, and it's going to be the JSON representation. So I'm going to copy and paste just to show you what the output looks like. So here's the major dimension value. And here's the value array, which is a next list. So 4 items that I want to insert to the spreadsheet. Now to insert the values, I'll reference the service object .spreadsheet .values, and I'll use the update method. We'll need to provide the spreadsheet ID. The value input option. And it's going to be user underscore entered. And for the range, I want to insert the headers from cell range A1. And I'll insert F string. So here we can insert the tab name variable value, followed by an exclamation symbol. And it's going to be A1. Oh, and just one more thing. For the body, it's going to be coming from request body columns. Now if I run these two code blocks, and going back to the spreadsheet, and here's our column headers. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these two statements. You can reuse the code. So this is going to be insert rows, insert columns, insert column names. and I'll change these to values. And since my record set object is already a nest list or nest array, so I can directly insert the object name. Oops, so here I X out the session. Yeah, I'll come back to that later. And I'll insert my rows on cell range A2. And it's going to be request body values. At this point, we have complete our task. I want to print a message. Task is complete. Then I want to close my cursor connection and my connection object. And that's it. Now let's test out the script. So I'm going to move the spreadsheet to the right. Okay, and let me minimize this. I'm going to press F5 to run the script. Now let's take a look. And here's our table from SQL Server. And I should expect 2000 records. So if we go to the end of the line, it's going to be 2001 will be the last row. Right now, let's run another test. So I'm going to use the other SQL statement, which is this one right here. So I'll go back to step 1.2, actually step 1.1. Inside the SQL query variable, I'll make a copy. I'll insert the other SQL statement. Except that this time I want to be able to specify my value to the where clause. And it's going to be my parameter value. So I'll replace the value with a question mark. And the question mark serves kind of like a placeholder that when we use this SQL method, we can supply our own parameter values. So from cursor.SQL. And if we look at the parameters, the first parameter is the query string, which is the SQL statement. The second parameter is going to be the placeholder values that you want to insert to your SQL query. Here I'm going to provide my SQL query, followed by the parameter values. And we need to insert the values in a list. And I want to fill the value with 2020 to this question mark. Now I'm going to rerun the script again. Now let's take a look. So what we should be seeing is the script is going to clear the worksheet. And here the connection is created. What did you say? Oh, okay, I see. So here's a little bit tricky. So here, from the previous SQL statement, we're doing something with the published dates column. So here what I can do is, let me see. So what I can do is I can check against the column, against this column. So if I can say that if published dates column exists, then run this statement. Otherwise, we'll skip this procedure. Let me try again. So I'm going to press F5 to run the script. And I think the task is complete. Right, so here's our second report. And we have 2 columns, followed by 21 rows. So this is everything I want to share in this video. And hopefully you guys found the video useful. And as always, see you guys watching. I'll see you guys on the next video.